Now guys, we're going to be moving on to the burn. Remember when you're burning leather to always use veg tan leather, don't use normal leather, even if you're wearing a vapor filter mask. I think a vapor filter mask does give you a little bit of extra leeway, does let you get away with things that you wouldn't normally get away with burning, but you have to remember that if you're using a vapor filter mask, turn the machine off, if you're using a vapor filter mask it's only protecting you, it's not protecting the people around you. Same as if you're using an extraction system. Extraction systems aren't perfect and the extractor has to go somewhere. I know it goes outside guys and it dissipates a lot of the smoke, but you're still producing that smoke. So burning things that are toxic if you burn them, like chemically tanned leather rather than veg tan leather, things like that, is just not very pleasant. So guys, burning leather. When burning leather, you have to remember that the pyrography piece you use is going to get a little bit gunky. Unfortunately, that is just one of the things that happens because leather doesn't burn as cleanly as wood. Next thing you're going to have to realise is you're going to need a very low temperature. For instance, my pyrography machine goes up to 10, and you've sometimes seen me use 10 for doing dark bits on wood. This is currently set to 1.5, and we're already getting quite a nice clean burn on leather. So let's zoom in a little bit. Just make sure you saw me do that burn on leather. So we're already getting, even though it's only 1.5, a nice clean burn on leather. So let's use our patterned bit of leather. So this is a laser transferred pattern, and as you can see we've got our laser transferred design, and all we're going to do is, as with all designs, just follow the design. Now if you're interested in what sort of tip I'm using guys, I'm using a spear point tip, and as you can see it's not the same spear point tip I did the paper patterning with, because that one's gotten gunky because of the patterning. So we're using a fresh bit. Now you'll find that with any sharp bit like a spear point bit, sometimes you can accidentally cut into the leather, so be careful. I'm using the edge of it because I want this particular style of sharp edged but then soft insided burn. And we're just going to copy the pattern all the way around. I'm still getting used to burning on leather, it's a new experience. It's a bit different. And as you can see, the little marks where I've overrun on the pattern can be destroyed simply with a little bit of pressure and burning a little bit across where I've overrun the pattern. And this means of course that your pattern isn't the be all and end all. If you make a mistake in your pattern, you can do a lot to correct it simply by adjusting how and where you're burning. And this actually, as you can see from my design, and it's always useful to have your design nearby guys, is these areas are quite dark. So actually what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to fill these areas in, which will hide even more of my sins. And I know a lot of guys who are new to pyrography are worried about hiding their sins, so to speak. Can you still see? Yes you can. But guys, seriously, if you make a mistake, bear in mind this is a really complicated thing to do. Pyrography in any form, whether you're doing it on wood or leather. Some people do pyrography on paper. I might give that a try. It looks really interesting. But if you make a mistake guys, seriously don't get upset at yourselves. I make more mistakes than most people. and I'm just happy to putter along making mistakes. It's one of the things I've learnt through my life, through martial arts and things, is if you don't make mistakes, you never learn anything. So I'm using a spear point tip because I want this kind of shading around the edges of these designs, and all I'm doing is I'm actually using the back edge of the blade. So I'm not using this close edge, I'm actually using the far side of the blade to fine the line, and then I'm using the close edge of the blade to give me my shading that I'm using, to give me this shaded gradient almost there. And that gives quite a nice look in my opinion for what I'm after. And once again, bear in mind that leather's going to release certain oils and things as you burn it, so your pyrography tip's probably going to get a little gunky. Don't worry about that, guys. If you've got a vapor filter mask or you've got an extractor, then what I recommend you do is, if you think your pyrography tip is getting a little bit gunky, whack your pyrography machine all the way up. In fact, what I'll do is I'll pop my vapor filter mask on momentarily and I'll just clean off my pyrography bit. There we go, guys. That's how you clean the pyrography bit. Turn the pyrography machine all the way up and that will burn off a lot of the oil and residues. Then brush it with a brass or steel brush just to clean off anything that's stuck on there and just to give it a little bit of friction. Let it cool down again, turn it back down to the original temperature, and then from there, guys, you can just carry on burning. And that is what a lot of the gunk that you get built up when you're doing leather burning is. It's leather oil. It's oil that gets developed, that gets brought out of the leather as you burn it. And so a little bit of heat, as with any oil, a little bit of heat will draw that oil out, will burn that oil off. You don't have to press very hard when you're doing pyrography on leather, guys. But you don't have to worry about pressing gently either. As long as you're not using the blade edge. In fact, I'll show you in a moment on a scrap bit what a blade edge will do if you press too hard. A blade edge, or the sharp edge of a spear point tip. So, a blade edge or the sharp edge of a spear point tip, while I remember to do it, guys. Because of course you've got heat and you've got an edge. You'll find that you actually can carve into the leather with it, and you can cause quite nasty scratches, quite nasty lacerations in the leather. There we go, that direction is sharp. I was wondering which direction was sharp on this one. You can actually go into the leather and cause these little bits, little scratches. They don't look nice on a burn. I don't really enjoy them. So a nice controlled low temperature, and try not to go pointed into the piece that you're burning. It's always best if you sort of use an edge instead. I mean, you can use a soft point like a fine detail point or shoe point, box point. You could even use a shading bit. In fact, the edge of a flattened shading bit, one of the U-shaped ones that I know you can get for things like the razor edge and things like that, one of those flattened shading bits is actually a very good bit for transferring patterns, because it's got a very sharp edge despite the fact it's got a nice flat surface as well. So it's very good for transferring patterns as well as potentially burning them. So I'll just do this inner section as well, which is a nice little circle, which of course is always hell to do. Circles are absolute... That's one of the risks of doing a piece quite this small, is occasionally you will touch the pyrography machine. The phrase comes to mind is "get back on the horse." And you see, because I've slightly smegged up my pattern, that's not as tidy as I would necessarily want it to be. It also doesn't help that I burnt myself. Nice cool bit of glass though. Because this is set very low, guys, that wasn't very bad burn, but if it's set high, of course, you can take skin off quite easily, so be very careful when you're doing pyrography. Be more careful than I am, obviously, because I'm obviously not careful enough. Now guys that I've done all the edges and I want to do some shading, I'm going to move on to a different point. So before we change the tip, turn off the machine. Oop. Hot tip on the desk, but that's okay. Just whack it in. And in this case I'm going to use an extended heavy detail point, or super heavy detail point actually. And an extended super heavy detail point, because I don't think I've actually done one of these, looks a little bit like this. It's just a heavy detail point that instead of having 2 or 3 mils on the tip, like this heavy detail point here, it's got much more. Reason for that is, actually, as you're doing pyrography, you can bend this into a loop or bend this into a curve, and it can give you more accuracy for shading. Now, as always, what I want to do is I want to bend this into a slight curve. And then bend it down. And you see I've now made this sort of shape with it. This is a foot shape. It's very similar to the shape for the flattened shading bits. It's just not a flattened one. And this sort of boot shape lets you be very accurate with shading, lets you bring these tines and all of the wires up and away from your piece so that you only shade the bits that you want to shade. Now, one thing you have to bear in mind with leather, guys, is that when it comes to the treating of it, because you've used a lot of heat, you've dried out the leather a lot, so it's going to be very thirsty when you use a leather treatment on it. The leather treatment I use is neutral polish, neutral coloured polish. You can use leather furniture polish, you can use leather chair polish, treatment for leather jackets. I use neutral shoe polish. No matter what one you use, you have to remember, of course, that it's actually going to take away a little bit of your pyrography. It's going to lighten up the colours. So burn a little bit darker than you want, and you'll find that when you clean it, you'll get the sort of shade you want. So guys, I've been the Pyrography. No, I haven't been the Pyrography droid. What am I talking about? I'm talking complete and utter nonsense. I've been the Learning Droid, guys. That's been Burning Leather. Always remember, guys, even though I didn't this time because I was talking the whole time, I did have a fan and I did have a nice open garage door and open set of windows and things. always wear a mask or have some kind of ventilation system when you're doing pyrography, guys, especially if you're doing it on something that's slightly toxic to burn, or that you risk burning something that's slightly toxic, like burning ink on paper. And don't burn normal leather, burn veg tan leather. There's two kinds of veg tan leather I've used to burn. I've used the suede backed, which I believe is oak tanned, so you have this kind of suedey back. I've also used leather that's thinner than this, that has a back a bit like corkboard, and that I believe is the vegetable tannin tanned leather rather than the oak tannin tanned leather. So bear in mind, guys, no dyed leathers. I mean, you can get vegetable tanned leather that looks like it's been slightly brown dyed. That's still just vegetable tanned, it hasn't been dyed, it's just been tanned slightly darker than the others. But bear in mind, guys, no dyes, no inks, burn safe. If you're using a vapor filter mask, guys, remember that's only protecting you, it's not protecting anyone else. So if you're burning in your kitchen using a vapor filter mask and you're burning something nasty, anyone else who comes into that kitchen, your kids, your husband, your wife, anyone else, your friends, your family, they'll be breathing the stuff that you don't want to breathe and the stuff you're wearing a mask to protect yourself from. So always, guys, burn somewhere safe, use protection, mask, ventilator, something like that, and enjoy yourself, guys. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it, it's just pyrography, it's not the end of the world. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you again next time.